She was born selfish and would die alone. That was my mother, standing in my waiting room, in front of my clients, on a Tuesday morning in October. Let me tell you what she was really screaming about. It started with a piece of certified mail. October 2024. I was sitting at my kitchen table at 7:14 a.m. with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. The envelope was from the Internal Revenue Service. I knew that before I opened it. You learn to recognize federal correspondence when you've been a CPA for 10 years. I set down the coffee, opened the envelope with a letter opener because that's how I open everything, unfolded the notice, 3 amended returns, Form 104 O-X, tax years 2021, 2022, and 2023. Each one listed me as a 50% partner in a business called Rosso LLC. Each one bore my name, my social security number, and my home address. Each one carried my signature at the bottom, except I had never seen these documents. I had never signed them. I had never been a partner in Rosso LLC, not at 50%, not at 1%, not at any percentage, in any capacity, at any point. The total phantom liability assigned to my name was $108,400. I set the notice down on the table. Beside it, already stamped and sealed in a manila envelope, sat my CPA license renewal application for the Nebraska Board of Accountancy. I had filled it out the night before. It was ready to mail. I looked at both documents on the same table, the renewal that represented everything I had built, the audit notice that could take it all away, and I knew exactly who had done this. Rosso LLC was my brother Joel's restaurant. Let me go back. Joel is 3 years younger than me. He opened Rosso in early 2015 with startup capital from our parents, Vernon and Pat. They pulled from their retirement savings. I never learned the exact amount, but it was substantial enough that our mother mentioned it at Thanksgiving that year with the particular tone she used when she wanted everyone to understand a sacrifice had been made. I was 26 at the time. 2 years into building my own practice, Hewitt Accounting Solutions. I had started it from nothing. No startup capital from Vernon and Pat, no loans. I rented a small office, bought secondhand furniture, and spent evenings cold calling small business owners across the Omaha metro area. By the time Joel opened his restaurant, I had 30 clients and was billing just under $140,000 a year. I was proud of that. I said so at a family dinner. Once. My father's response was, "That's good. Joel, tell them about the restaurant." That was the pattern. It had always been the pattern. Joel was the one with the vision, the ambition, the spark. I was the one who did other people's taxes. That's how they described it. Not financial consulting, not business advisory, not CPA, practice, just doing other people's taxes. Like I was filling out worksheets at a card table. Joel's restaurant struggled from the beginning. The concept was fine. The location was decent, but Joel had no discipline with money. He overstaffed. He overordered. He ran promotions that cost more than they brought in. By the 18-month mark, Rosso was hemorrhaging cash and Joel was behind on vendor payments. That's when Vernon called me. He didn't ask how the practice was going. He didn't ask about my clients or my revenue or the fact that I had just crossed 50 active accounts. He said, "Your brother needs help." Family backs. Family. That's what family does. The first transfer was $1,500. March 2016. I sent it from my personal checking account to Joel's. He said he'd pay it back by summer. He didn't. The second transfer went out in April, then May, then June. Every month, $1,500. Joel called them loans. I called them loans too because that made it easier to keep sending them, but Joel never signed a promissory note. He never set a repayment schedule. He never once in 8 years transferred a single dollar back. I kept records. I always keep records. Every wire confirmation, every date, every amount. I logged them in a green spreadsheet on my personal laptop and I noted the verbal promises Joel made alongside each one. I'll get you back next quarter. Once the summer rush hits. By Christmas for sure. 96 entries, 96 months, 96 broken promises, $1,500 a month for 8 years, $144,000. That money came from my practice revenue, from the business I built alone, without their help, without their recognition. $144,000 that could have gone into expansion, into hiring an associate, into savings, into anything. Instead, it went into Rosso, LLC, a restaurant that never once turned a sustainable profit in its entire existence. And the whole time, Vernon and Pat held Joel up as the success story, the entrepreneur, the risk taker. At every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call, the conversation orbited Joel. His menu changes, his new chef, his plans to open a second location, plans that existed nowhere except in his mouth. My grandmother saw it differently. Helen Hewitt was 83 years old and sharper than anyone else in the family. She had watched me study for the CPA exam at her kitchen table. She had quizzed me on tax code sections from index cards I'd made, reading them aloud through her bifocals without complaint. The day I passed, she gave me a gift. It was a leather-bound ledger, dark brown, heavy, the kind with lined pages and a ribbon bookmark sewn into the spine. On the first page, in her careful handwriting, she had written, "For the one who counts what matters." I used that ledger for years, client notes, revenue milestones. The first time I crossed $200,000 in annual billings, I wrote the date on the next clean page. It lived on my desk at the office, then at home when I started keeping more sensitive records there. Joel spilled red wine on it at a holiday dinner in 2019. He was gesturing with his glass, telling a story about a customer at the restaurant, and the wine arced across the table and landed directly on the open ledger. The pages soaked through immediately, dark red across Helen's inscription, across my notes, across years of entries. Joel laughed. Not an embarrassed laugh, not an apologetic one, a real laugh, like it was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. Pat smiled. Vernon said nothing. Helen, sitting at the end of the table, watched me. I picked up the ledger, carried it to the kitchen, blotted the pages with paper towels one by one, pressing carefully so the ink underneath wouldn't smear worse than it already had. The wine left stains that never came out. Rust-colored shadows across every page it touched. I didn't say a word. I brought the ledger back to the table, set it beside my plate, and finished my meal. If you've ever worked your whole life to build something, only to have your own family try to tear it down, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to hear what came next. That was 2019. The transfers kept going, $1,500 every month. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Joel would stabilize. I told myself this was simply what family did. I was wrong about all of it. By 2023, I had sent Joel $144,000. My practice had grown to 85 small business clients, sole proprietors, restaurant owners, contractors, retail operators across the Omaha metro area. I billed $278,000 that year. I was good at what I did. My clients renewed. They referred others. They trusted me with their books, their audits, their quarterly filings, their livelihoods, and Joel was still calling every month for his $1,500. The last transfer was in September 2024, 1 month before the IRS notice arrived. Now let me tell you what Joel did with my trust. I spread the IRS documents across my kitchen table that morning. 3 amended returns, tax years 2021, 2022, 2023, each one a Form 1040-X, filed with the IRS under my name, listing me as a 50% partner in Rosso, LLC. Joel had taken the business losses from his failing restaurant and redistributed them onto my tax profile to reduce his own exposure. He had forged my signature on federal documents. He had used my social security number. He had used my home address. I stared at the signature line on the first return. It was close. Someone unfamiliar with my handwriting might not have caught it, but I had signed my name on 10,000 documents over the course of my career. I knew my own hand. That was not it. I turned to the second return. Same forgery, same SSN, same address. Then I looked at the address confirmation page attached to the second filing. It was a supplementary form used to verify the taxpayer's mailing address when amended returns are filed from a different location than the original. The handwriting on that form was not Joel's. It was my mother's. I recognized it the way you recognize a voice in the dark. The looping P, the way she crossed her T's high and to the right. Pat had filled out the address confirmation. She had provided my home address for the forgery. She had provided my social security number. My parents had known. They hadn't just enabled this. They had participated. I sat at that table for a long time. The coffee was cold. The house was silent. The license renewal sat in its sealed envelope beside the audit notice that could end my career. 85 clients, sole proprietors who closed their shops at 6 p.m. and drove across town to drop off their receipts at my office, restaurant owners who called me at 11 p.m. during tax season because they couldn't sleep, contractors who had never worked with an accountant before me and now couldn't imagine filing without one. 3, 5, 7 years of trust. Some of them had found me in those early months when I was building the practice from nothing, when I was nobody, when I was just doing other people's taxes. If Vernon's threat landed, if a complaint reached the Nebraska Board of Accountancy, if my license was suspended pending review, those 85 people would lose their accountant in the fourth quarter of the tax year. October, the worst possible timing, not accidental timing. Vernon had made his threat knowing exactly when it would cause the most damage. This was not about me anymore. It had not been about me for a long time. Something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a clean, quiet break. I closed the IRS notice. I closed the ledger. I placed both documents side by side on the kitchen table and looked at them for 1 full minute. Then I picked up the phone and called Margaret Collins. Margaret Collins answered on the second ring. She didn't ask why I was calling at 7:50 in the morning. She didn't ask me to explain how I was feeling. She asked me what I had in front of me. I told her. 3 forged, amended returns, $108,400 in phantom tax liability in my name. My Social Security number used without consent. My signature forged on federal documents. My mother's handwriting on the address confirmation. Margaret was quiet for about 4 seconds. Then she said, "How far back do your records go?" 8 years, I said. Wire confirmations? Everyone. Time-stamped? Yes. How soon can you get everything to my office? I looked at the kitchen table. The IRS notice, the ledger, the laptop with the green spreadsheet logging 96 monthly transfers, the manila folder where I kept printed copies of wire confirmations because I had learned a long time ago that digital records can fail and paper does not. Today, I said, Margaret's retainer was $8,500. I wrote the check that afternoon. I did not ask Joel for it. I did not ask Vernon. I did not mention it to Pat. I absorbed it the way I had absorbed everything else, quietly, completely, from my own account. That was day 6. Day 2, I called Joel. I did not plan what I would say. I didn't need to. I had spent 10 years listening to clients describe financial disputes with partners, with spouses, with family members. I knew that the person who speaks least controls the conversation. Joel answered on the 4th ring. His voice had that particular energy it always carried. Slightly too warm, slightly too fast, like he was already in the middle of a better story. "Hey, Mona, what's going on?" "I received an IRS audit notice yesterday," I said. 3 amended returns filed under my name listing me as a 50% partner in Rosso, LLC. I have never been a partner in your restaurant, Joel. Silence. 2 full seconds. Then, "Okay, let's not make this into something it isn't." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "The accountant I was using suggested restructuring some of the loss allocations. It's a common strategy. It was supposed to help both of us." "You signed my name," I said. "Ramona, come on. It's a technicality. Nobody's trying to—" "You signed my name on a federal document 3 times using my Social Security number. You're overreacting. This is fixable. Let me talk to my guy and we'll get it straightened out in a week." I said, "I know." He waited for more. There was no more. "So we're good?" he said. I ended the call. Day 3. Vernon. My father called at 6:15 p.m. His voice was different from Joel's. Not warm, not fast, low and deliberate, the way he spoke when he wanted you to understand that he had thought carefully about what he was about to say and that his position was final. "Your brother told me about your conversation," Vernon said. "I want you to listen to me carefully, Ramona. This is a family matter. It stays in the family. You do not involve outside parties. You do not file anything. You do not escalate." I said nothing. "If you pursue this, I will file a complaint with the Nebraska Board of Accountancy. I'll report you for unethical conduct, misrepresentation of client relationships, commingling of business funds, whatever sticks long enough to trigger a review. You'll spend 6 months defending your license while this gets sorted out quietly." I held the phone against my ear. I thought about the 85 clients who depended on that license, the sole proprietors and restaurant owners and contractors across the Omaha metro area whose fourth quarter filings were already in process. I thought about what a 6-month license suspension would mean for every one of them. October. He had chosen October on purpose. "Go ahead," I said. 2 words. I ended the call. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I thought about Vernon's voice, the careful, practiced cadence of a man who had spent 30 years managing facilities. Managing problems, managing people, managing silence. He had used that voice on me my entire life. It had always worked before. It did not work now. Day 4. Joel filed a fourth fraudulent document, another amended return, a second round doubling down on the same forgeries. I learned this later from Margaret when the ERS forwarded the filing to her as part of the investigation record. Joel had not retreated. He had escalated. He was so accustomed to my compliance that he interpreted my calm as surrender. Day 5. Pat. My mother arrived at my office at 9:22 a.m. on a Tuesday. The waiting room held 4 clients. 2 were seated with paperwork in their laps. 1 was standing at the front counter signing in. The 4th had just come through the door with a folder of receipts under his arm. Pat came in behind him. She was wearing the same coat she wore to every family function, the beige one with the gold buttons that she had bought at Dillard's in 2017 and was proud of in a way that made her mention it every time she put it on. She stood in the doorway of the waiting room, and her eyes were already red. Her voice started low. "Ramona, please, you have to stop this. You're tearing this family apart." I stayed behind the counter. I kept my voice even. "This isn't the place, Mom. Your brother is scared. Your father can't sleep. I don't know what you've told that lawyer, but whatever it is, you can undo it. You can call her right now and tell her it was a misunderstanding." I didn't respond. I just listened. "He's your brother, Ramona. He made a mistake. People make mistakes. You don't destroy your own family over paperwork." Paperwork. She called forged federal documents paperwork. She called $108,400 in phantom tax liability a mistake. "You need to leave," I said. That was when her voice changed. The crying stopped. The red-rimmed eyes went hard. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and let her voice fill the entire waiting room. She was born selfish and would die alone. The room went silent. Every client looked up. The man with the receipts folder froze with his hand on the counter. The 2 seated clients stared. The one at the sign-in sheet set down the pen. I kept my hand on the doorframe. I did not step forward. I did not step back. I did not raise my voice. "You need to leave," I said again. Pat stared at me for 3 seconds. Then she turned, pushed through the door, and walked to her car. I watched her through the window. She sat behind the wheel for a full minute before she started the engine. I closed the office door softly. No slam, just the quiet click of the lock sliding into place. I turned around. My 4 clients were still watching me. I straightened a stack of folders on the counter, sat back down at my desk and said, "Who's next?" The following evening at 11:47 p.m., I sat in my home office with the completed filing spread across the kitchen table, 47 pages, the original forged amended returns, my 8-year transfer record, every wire confirmation, every date, every amount, every broken promise, time-stamped screenshots of 96 bank transactions totaling $144,000, copies of the wine-stained ledger pages where I had mapped each forged filing against the actual financial timeline, and Margaret Collins's professional declaration establishing that I had never participated in Rosso LLC in any capacity at any point. Margaret was on speaker. Her voice was steady, the way it always was. Document count confirmed. 47 pages. Affidavit is ready for signature. The wine-stained ledger sat open beside the filing, open to the page where the Rosso LLC transfers began, March 2016. Helen's inscription was visible at the top of the facing page, the letters darkened with rust-colored wine shadows but still legible, "For the one who counts what matters." I typed my name at the bottom of the affidavit. Read it twice. Signed it. The soft, unmistakable click of the PDF confirmation echoed in the dead silence of the room. IRS Form 14039, Identity Theft, Victim Assistance Affidavit, filed at 11:54 p.m. The $108,400 liability, frozen in my name pending investigation, effective upon receipt, simultaneously triggering an IRS criminal investigation referral under 26 U.S.C. Section 7206 for fraud and false statements on federal tax returns, and 18 U.S.C. Section 1028 for identity theft. Vernon and Pat named as co-conspirators for providing my social security number and home address. One filing, 47 pages, 8 years of records that Joel never believed I was keeping because he never believed my work mattered enough to keep. I did not call Joel. I did not call Vernon. I did not call Pat. I closed the laptop. I turned off the ringer on my phone. I turned off the lamp. I went to bed. I slept through the night for the first time in 6 days. The next morning, Margaret Collins called at 8:12 a.m. I answered on the first ring. "The IRS Criminal Investigation Division has accepted the referral," she said. "They'll be assigning a special agent within the next 2 to 3 weeks. From this point forward, this is a federal matter. It is entirely out of your family's control." I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had opened the audit notice 6 days earlier. The coffee was hot this time. The house was quiet. "What about the Board of Accountancy threat?" I asked. "Never filed," Margaret said. "I checked this morning. No complaint on record. Vernon either reconsidered or realized that filing a complaint against his own daughter while under investigation as a co-conspirator in federal tax fraud would be the worst legal decision of his life. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, nothing. Just clarity. Clear and sharp, like the first clean breath after years of holding it. My phone buzzed 3 times that afternoon. Joel, Vernon, a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was Pat calling from a different line. I let each one go to voicemail. I deleted them without listening. Over the next week, the calls kept coming. 43 missed calls, 19 voicemails. The texts piled up. I could see the previews on my lock screen without opening them. Joel started confused, then turned desperate, then turned threatening. Vernon's were short and cold. Pat's were long and punctuated with exclamation points. I turned off the ringer. I let the notifications pile up like leaves against a window. I didn't read them. I didn't respond. There was nothing to add. I went through my phone that night. I blocked Joel's number. I blocked Vernon's. I blocked Pat's. I blocked the unknown number Pat had used. I removed myself from the family group text. I deleted every unread voicemail. I archived every unread email without opening it. I didn't do it in anger. I did it in clarity. The house was quiet. The ledger sat closed on the kitchen table. Helen's inscription hidden between wine-stained pages, safe and accounted for, the way it had always been. I turned off the lights. I went to bed. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp. It was clear. The IRS criminal investigation moved at its own pace. I did not call Margaret for updates. She called me when there was something to report. Between November 2024 and July 2025, those calls came roughly once a month. Brief, factual, devoid of speculation. Margaret did not speculate. That was one of the reasons I had hired her. I went back to work. That was the part nobody outside would have found dramatic, but it was the part that mattered most. November, December, January, the fourth quarter, and then tax season. 85 clients with quarterly filings, year-end reconciliations, W-2 distributions, 109, 9 deadlines. I sat at my desk 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I did the work. The same work my family had spent a decade calling just doing other people's taxes. My clients never mentioned Pat's outburst in the waiting room. Not one of them. The 4 who had been there that Tuesday continued their appointments without comment. 2 of them renewed their annual contracts early that December. One, a contractor named Bill Anderson, who had been with me since 2017, left a note clipped to his receipt folder that said, "Glad you're still here." I kept the note in the top drawer of my desk. In late January, Margaret called to tell me Joel had retained counsel. A public defender. He couldn't afford private representation. The restaurant had been bleeding for months, worse than usual, because the IRS investigation had frozen certain accounts tied to Rosso, LLC, pending the fraud determination. She said the case was moving toward a plea. I said, "Okay." She said, "You don't need to do anything." I said, "I know." In March, Margaret informed me that Vernon and Pat had been formally notified of their co-conspirator status. Their involvement, providing my social security number and home address to Joel for the purpose of filing forged federal documents, had been documented in the IRS Special Agents Report. They had retained their own accountant, a former colleague of mine named David Miller, to handle the response. I knew David. He was competent and thorough and would have understood immediately what Vernon and Pat had done. I did not reach out to David. He did not reach out to me. There was nothing to discuss. The plea hearing was scheduled for July 2025, 9 months after the certified mail arrived at my kitchen table. Margaret asked if I wanted to attend. I said yes. She didn't ask why. I didn't explain. Joel pleaded guilty to tax fraud under 26 U.S.C. Section 7206 on a Wednesday morning in a federal courtroom in Omaha. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. He wore a navy suit I had never seen before, probably borrowed. His attorney entered the plea on his behalf. Joel confirmed it when the judge asked. His sentence, 24 months of supervised probation, $108,400 in restitution to the Internal Revenue Service, no prison time. I sat in the third row. Margaret sat beside me. The 47-page exhibit package had been entered into evidence earlier that morning, and the Weinstein ledger sat on the table at the front of the courtroom, its pages flagged with colored tabs Margaret had placed weeks before. Rust-colored shadows visible even from where I sat. Joel looked at the ledger for a long moment. He looked at the tabs, at the Weinsteins he had put there 6 years earlier at a holiday dinner, while he laughed and my grandmother watched from the end of the table. He did not look at me. He signed the plea agreement. I watched him sign it the way I had watched clients sign documents for 10 years. Calmly, completely, without expression. 24 months of probation, not prison. I sat with that for a moment after the hearing. Margaret and I walked to the parking lot in silence. She stopped at her car and said, "The restitution order is enforceable. His payments begin in 30 days. I nodded. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I'm clear," I said. She nodded. That was enough. I drove home. I did not stop at my parents' house. I did not call anyone. I made dinner. I sat at the kitchen table and ate it alone, and the silence in the house was not empty. It was just mine. What happened next came to me the way weather comes, slowly from a distance, impossible to stop. Rosso LLC closed its doors in September 2025, 60 days after the plea hearing. Joel couldn't cover the lease. He couldn't cover the vendor debts. He couldn't cover payroll for the 3 remaining staff members who had stayed through the investigation out of either loyalty or inertia. The building went dark on a Tuesday. By November 2025, a competing restaurant had signed the lease and was renovating the space. Joel's restitution payments began at $600 a month. $600. I had given him $1,500 every month for 8 years, and now the federal government was requiring him to repay his fraud at less than half that rate. The irony existed. I did not comment on it. Vernon and Pat received their IRS penalty notices in October 2025, almost exactly 1 year after the audit notice had arrived at my kitchen table, $23,500 jointly. Their returns were flagged for a 3-year audit cycle, meaning every filing they submitted through 2028 would be reviewed line by line. David Miller, their accountant, withdrew from the engagement the following month. I learned this through a professional network update. I did not ask questions. Joel and his wife separated briefly in November. They reconciled before Christmas, but something had shifted. A former vendor who had supplied Rosso's bar program told me, without my asking, that Joel's wife had taken a full-time position at an insurance agency. She had not worked outside the restaurant in 7 years. By January 2026, Joel was driving rideshare, nights and weekends. I knew this because a client of mine, a restaurant owner named Tom Taylor, who operated 2 locations in the Bellevue area, mentioned he had been matched with Joel on a ride to the airport. Tom didn't know the full story. He just said, "Isn't that your brother? Running people to Epley at midnight?" I said, "I wouldn't know." I did not seek updates. But the information arrived anyway, carried on the professional currents of a mid-sized city where people talked. Joel's credit score had dropped to somewhere in the low 400s. The restitution order and the closed business accounts had seen to that. Vernon was driving a 10-year-old sedan now. Pat had not been seen at Dillard's. The family dinners at Vernon and Pat's house, the ones I had attended for years while swallowing wine-stained insults, had stopped entirely. There was no one left to perform for. The 14 new clients arrived between August and October 2025, all of them from Joel's former vendor network: produce suppliers, linen services, beverage distributors, equipment lessors. Small business owners who had done business with Rosso LLC lost money in its collapse and found me through professional reputation after the plea hearing became public record. They called my office one by one over the course of 90 days. Each conversation was brief. Each ended with a signed engagement letter. 14 new clients, 85 became 99. My practice revenue for the year crossed $310,000 for the first time, October 2026, 2 years to the month since the certified mail arrived. I was at my office on a Saturday morning. The city was quiet outside. Leaves had started turning along Dodge Street, and the light through my office window had that particular autumn clarity, sharp, golden, unhurried. I was reviewing fourth quarter projections for a new client, a beverage distributor named Gary White, who had called me 3 weeks after Joel's plea hearing. He had been Rosso's primary wine supplier for 4 years. He had lost $11,000 in unpaid invoices when the restaurant closed. When he sat across from my desk for the first time, he looked at the framed CPA certificate on the wall and said, "I hear you're the one who keeps clean books." I said, "I am." Practice revenue for the year, $312,000. 99 active clients, 0 outstanding debts, 0 unresolved tax liabilities. The $108,400 phantom liability had been fully cleared from my record 8 months earlier, the IRS having accepted Margaret's documentation in its entirety. Helen had died in September 2025, quietly in her sleep, 6 weeks after the plea hearing. She was 84. I received the call from the hospice facility on a Wednesday morning. I closed my office for the day. I sat at the kitchen table with the wine-stained ledger and turned the pages slowly, reading every entry, every note, every rust-colored shadow where the wine had dried into the paper 6 years earlier. She had known. During a phone call in August, 1 month after the plea, her voice had been thin but certain. She said, "You kept the ledger clean." She did not ask for details. She did not ask about Joel or Vernon or Pat. She said that one sentence, and it was enough. I did not attend the funeral. Vernon and Pat were there. Joel was there. I sent flowers to the hospice facility with a card that said nothing except my name. Now I opened the ledger one last time. I turned to the first page. Helen's handwriting, darkened with wine stains but still legible, every letter visible, every word intact. For the one who counts what matters. I closed it. Set it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Closed the drawer. The office was quiet. The autumn light moved slowly across the floor. I picked up my coffee, de wine still warm as and turned back to the fourth quarter projections on my screen. 99 clients depending on clean numbers and honest work. She said the ledger was for the one who counts what matters. I think she always knew it would end up exactly where it did. The cut was clean. I never regretted a single second of it. If you enjoyed this story about protecting your livelihood and knowing your worth, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.